Would you call the market frothy today?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, come on.
Frappuccino, frothuccino, whatever.
This is the Time on Wing podcast. Welcome back. I'm Courtney Miller with Visual Approach Analytics. As always, it's Garrick Deschavant of Collateral Verifications. Garrick, who are we talking to today?
Today, we will be speaking with Aaron Prothero. Aaron, who we've known for quite a while, he's a big fan of the show. Love having him on. He is currently VP at Aerolease Aviation, so we know a little bit about the company, having Jep on, was it 2 years ago now? But anyway, so he's been there basically for pretty much all his career. He was actually intern at Aerolease through the iStaff Foundation prior to that, and then he had a short stint as a sales rep for Highbury Group. Got a BS from Temple University in International Business. But yeah, so I think it's going to be interesting to kind of get one of the younger generation folks on our show to kind of hear. I mean, he's a great guy, right? He's done a ton of stuff through Aerolease, so it'd be kind of nice to get, the gray hairs out of the way and get some
technical term is whippersnapper.
Whippersnapper? Nice. Yeah, it's going to be great to have this whippersnapper on for us old folk over here. So anyway, Aaron, this is your time on wing.
And get off my lawn, Aaron. A quick disclaimer for all podcasts before we start. The opinions you're going to hear expressed today are personal, and those of Garrick, myself, the guest, shouldn't be relied on as fact or as professional advice. This applies specifically to any mentions of public companies and matters not in the public domain. We haven't verified every statement, so please treat this as the candid conversation that it is.
So before we get on with our guest, which you guys are going to absolutely love, we obviously, first of all, we want to thank all our listeners for listening to us and making the show what it is today. And we certainly welcome any of you to, whenever you see us at conferences, just please say hello. And we'd love to hear that you guys are listening and fans of the show. As you all know, we do run businesses. And so from my end, it's Collateral Verifications. On the appraisal side, right, obviously, if you have any needs when it comes to aircraft, engine, landing gear, you name it, right? Just please feel free to reach out. I'm very approachable. I'm happy to chat about any kind of projects, and we'd love to work with you on a variety of things. We do have some publications out there as well. I do Turbine Aircraft Guide, Turboprop Value Guide. I've got the Aircraft Rating Tool. So there's various publications that we put together that can kind of help you on your day-to-day. Great reference points. So definitely, kind of reach out to us, and we'd love to chat and kind of start that relationship with you.
Okay. Back to the show.
So, Aaron, thank you very much for joining us today. It's great to have you on the pod. We've obviously known you for quite some time. We always love chatting with you, so we figured, why not bring somebody on that's younger and more successful than us, which seems to be usually we have older and more successful. So we figure we try the other way, right? Younger and more successful. Yeah, that'll work, right? But thanks for agreeing to do this. It is more. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's okay. It's all right. It'll.
I don't know. Judging by the success of this podcast, I don't know.
Well, listen, I did notice that we did pass one major milestone, which is Garrick's calling it a pod now.
Oh yeah,
I know. I'm trying to be hip.
Hey, gotta do what you gotta do. I mean, listen, I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm an avid listener, as you both know, and I think that this is one of the best forms of media in commercial aviation because of the format. These are just conversations with industry guys and women that it feels like you're at a bar at ISTAT and we're just trading war stories and talking about the market. So I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, well, thanks for doing this. I know it's going to be a fun discussion. So, but as we do with everybody else, right? All our guests, we'd love to know how you got into aviation, right? Where did that passion come from? I know you've got kind of a history, I think, with your family being in aviation, right? So, but we'd love to hear from you as to where that came about and where how you got to where you are today. So I'll let you take it.
Yeah, so you're right. My family is in the business in different forms. I joke that there are military brats that move around. I was an Airbus brat. My dad started his career at BAE Aerospace and transferred over to Toulouse, as many of the British members of this industry did. And I was born outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And at the time, my father was in the customer support program for the entry into service of the A320 in North America. We moved around a lot. We ended up in, Memphis. That was a break from the A320. That was A300 stuff with FedEx. And, you can see where we were going. We were in Phoenix. We were in San Francisco. We were in Atlanta. Right before I was born, he was in Sri Lanka. And so I was actually supposed to be delivered in Sri Lanka, but they moved.
But FedEx was late with the A300 behind her.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so just running around the United States, being on ramps, smelling the jet fuel,
the jet fuel
as
smell.
a kid, it just stays with you. And I always had a real interest or obsession with transportation in general, as a lot of young boys do. Planes, trains, and automobiles. I was all over it. Model train maker, model airplane builder, RC airplanes. And then, as I got older, it just morphed into airplanes. And that's where I just, I really took off, no pun intended, in the transportation space. And then, as I was coming through college, I didn't, with my family background in the industry and stuff like that, I didn't really know, exactly what I wanted to do in the industry. All I knew, as I think a lot of the guests come on here, is I just love airplanes. That's the heart of it all. A couple different ways you can approach this industry, and I ended up on the more, we call it, entrepreneurial trading side. And I just felt I just found my groove in that, and my personality and how I operate, in life. I fell right into it, and then I took off running from there. So it really comes down to that, it's just the smell of jet fuel, and now, because we have our office just south of the airport in Miami.
Yeah, very cool office, by the way.
Yeah, Eric was there. Of course, we missed you, but you have to come.
Did we? I don't know if we missed him, but it's next time.
What was there an event?
Yeah,
it was for the Airbus event.
We had Cuban sandwiches after the Airbus event.
Oh, that's right. Listen, I was gonna come, but there was that one little problem that I wasn't invited.
Yeah, you were. You could have gone.
Well, probably invited to their event.
Get that appraiser tag.
None of the important ones.
I know you have to be an appraiser to get in. That's how it works.
I can't count.
Yeah.
So
yeah, sorry.
So sitting around our office, which Miami International Airport is probably the best aircraft spotting operations. I was talking with my partner Jep today that there was as we were talking, a DC-830 was taking off cargo aircraft right behind him. And so, being in and around the airport and that smell of jet fuel and the burnt rubber of, landing aircraft, it's, it just, every day, it's just a reinvigoration. So,
yeah. By the way, jet fuel doesn't taste good at all. Just want to point that out.
Well, you don't smell the jet fuel. Gallons out.
No, I used to work in an FBO, and I had a few instances where, when you're doing that, and all of a sudden it just splashes on you, and you're like, oh, it's just the smell is great, taste not as good.
I heard it's good.
That explains.
It's good for the skin. Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Okay, so was it Temple for international business? Is that right?
Yeah, I went to Temple University in Philadelphia. A town
which is not Pittsburgh. I just want to.
It is not Pittsburgh. It's the opposite. And I went there after having lived in the UK and graduating from international schools in the UK. So I came back to Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, which I have a love-hate relationship with the city. Love part is it's a beautiful city, beautiful skyline. The hate part is it's a rough and tough city, and being there in the summer, we were talking about this the other day, it just smells like trash juice,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The sweet like smells of marinating trash juice in the streets,
Yeah, kind of like New York City. It's got that lovely smell. It's fantastic. Hot. Well, that too. Yeah, it is being bashed like pot these days, but yeah.
But yeah, so and then I went there to study international business because I always wanted to be, a citizen of the world out there. The world gets smaller every day, especially as we deliver more aircraft, have faster channels of communication. And so being a citizen of the world was paramount to me, and getting a background and an education to help support that was the angle there. So yeah, Temple University, go Owls. And then once I left university, I started at Aerolease with Jep, and the best way to describe it is baptism by fire. Holy fire.
Yeah.
It was straight into it. If anybody knows Jep, which a lot of people do, it's, like I said, a very entrepreneurial mindset. It's a sink and swim mentality. If you're not coming up with creative solutions or deals or angles or whatever, you're going to get left behind. So, there was a big learning curve as I started out, and I think maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later in terms of, how new people approach the industry and how people can find their way in the industry. Because this way that I chose was trading. I mean, we're horse traders at our core, value driven investors, and learning that way of thinking, compared to how you come out of college all rosy-eyed and have these preconceptions about how business is done and how things happen in the world, and then that all gets thrown out and you get the real education, being in an environment like that. So,
but listen, there's no faster way from academia to punch in the face reality than Jep Thornton.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that's the shortest distance between 2 points.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's I joke, I call it my master's thesis, and Jep's the professor. So yeah, I got to give him a big shout out because, coming into the industry, he's been a huge mentor to me, and I've learned everything I know from him, and now to the point where, we're operating in tandem and going out and doing stuff together, and it's really cool how everything has shaped up, So
yeah. So what you've got a lot of students that come out of college, right? They look at aviation. What made you decide to go into more of the trading side versus picking like, hey, you know what, let me go work for an OEM, right? Which was part of your family, past as well. So go in that direction. I'm sure you probably could have had opportunities there. What about, looking at, well, maybe a bigger leasing company? You've got a lot of resources. You've got kind of, the exposure. So what made you go with kind of more of like a smaller shop, learn by, kind of fire hose kind of stuff? What made you choose that direction?
So when I first started, and as I was looking at stuff, I did have opportunities at OEMs, other leasing companies, consultancies, appraisers, and I was going to go down that road. But
on purpose?
On purpose.
Or was this like a
it's
backup? Or wow.
Yeah.
I was always a roll up the sleeves and figure it out type of guy. And as you're coming up in the industry, there's an institutional route, and then there's the other route, which I decided to take. And The reason for that is it just it keeps things interesting. The path to success in I call it the institutional world is long and drawn out, because you gotta do certain things to get to certain positions and do the dance in the corporate world to create success for yourself. I wanted to do it by cold hard deals, and JEP afforded me the ability to go out there, even as an entry level guy in the industry, to go out there and create. And I love creating, and in different forms, music, whatever. I love creating, and creating an aircraft deal is an art form in itself. And so starting out, I was looking at all these opportunities, and this path, gave me the ability to do that for myself, and itch that scratch to create and create value, that I could be really proud of. So,
All right. So first deal, you come in. What obviously don't talk specifics, but because it wasn't that long ago. But what were these like NGs? Like, I really what I want to know is what was kind of your first "oh wait, this isn't college" moment, which probably came pretty quickly.
Really quickly? What
was that? I don't know, transition, but that I kind of want to know your trial by fire stories here.
Yeah. So in the 2010s, when I started out, we were heavy into the 757. And talking a little bit about how Aerolease structures itself and our investment strategy is we're not a big shop. We like to use the term boutique private investors in aviation, but not only aviation. And when I started, it was driven into my head that the commercial aviation market cycle happens on average 9.8 years, right? And in those 9.8 years, there's a beginning where there's opportunities and chaos, and then as you go through the cycle, there are opportunities to sell out, to liquidate, to M&A, to do whatever in your exit strategy. And in that strategy, you focus your investment criteria on one aircraft or an angle of some sort like that. And during the 2010s, Aerolease was already operating on a 757 strategy. So they had built up, at that point when I got involved, it was probably 30, 40 757s for their own account, privately funded with either equity, majority equity partners or debt providers, depending on the structure of the deal and what was happening. But those were Aerolease, book aircraft. So
were these, before I'm interested in the aircraft themselves, did you focus on an engine type? Were they a mix of freighter and passenger?
Both freighter and passenger, because we have a long history in freighter aircraft going back to the 80s, the DC-8s, all the way through, A300s. And then the 757 still is the best airplane that was ever built, in terms of flexibility, mission profile, capabilities.
It was success. It was one of the best airplanes ever built because Boeing canceled it early.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how you know.
Go down that road, Corey. I have thoughts on that. But
yeah, we don't have that much time. Let's not go down there.
But 757 as a passenger aircraft was a killer application. I think it was a little before its time, in terms of where now we're sitting in that NMA, A321 XLR range where the 757 would have cleaned up. But it was that airplane. And then the cargo version of the aircraft was extremely capable. So we did a little bit of both. I mean, a lot of it was freight strategy. We're picking up feedstock. There were some passenger aircraft that didn't end up getting converted. It was this ad hoc, case by case basis of what are we going to do with this deal and how do the numbers work. And so we were really focusing on we did a lot of both engine types. Because there were different benefits to each engine type. One was cheaper, one was more reliable to maintain. One was more available in the market, the other one wasn't. And there are, angles that you can work through on that. So we kind of played both engine types, but it was a 7.5, all-encompassing strategy. We did a lot of different things. We sold an aircraft for can't say much more further than a defense contractor. We did a lot of other things. So I remember I was sitting in our office in Miami, and we had a 757 deal. And at that time, I was doing a lot of analyst duties and pricing and marketing and stuff like that. And it was, we were buying 2 airplanes from a major carrier, and we were lease backing them to that major carrier for economics that made my head spin. Like, you never see, you always talk about in university, tracking the S&P, and if you can beat the S&P with an investment strategy, that's a great, outcome. And then you see a good old fashioned aircraft trade, and you see the numbers, and I remember there were multiple people in the meeting that said you could see my horns start growing after I was like, oh my gosh, this is insane. So it was that deal that I really I picked up on how, because it was a very creatively structured deal. It was a lot of networking and getting deals based on that, and being able to have a relationship with somebody where you don't have to bullshit in between. Can I say that on this podcast?
Yeah, you can. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. You don't have
talk for all we care.
BS in between, but like those relationship deals where and we all know how they work. It's, hey, this whole do a deal on a napkin analogy at the bar kind of thing, and those deals work, and they're straightforward, and they're easy to do, and so that was my epiphany in aircraft leasing and trading, mostly, of, man, this stuff really is fascinating.
Yeah. Well, so I want to dissect that a little bit, because look, I've heard from one end of the spectrum, you'll hear it's all about relationships. Relationships are great. On the other end of the spectrum, you'll hear, oh, it's the good old boy network. And they mean the same thing, but they're implying something different. But I think what gets lost, look, we're talking 757s in 2015, 2016. Mm-hmm. The overhead of doing a deal for an airline, probably of decent size, is a real pain in the ass. So if somebody can come forward with a napkin, and the relationship is there that that this is going to be an equitable deal, perfect. Like, there's literal value in that. Like, I'll pay a value on smaller numbers too, right? Because I've got all this massive fleet to deal with. There's real value in that. Yeah,
there's value in being flexible. 100%. And you develop a reputation for being deal accretive, right? Where you're not in a deal and you're trying to kill it or do things that are not equitable, that are going to just kill the deal. There are a lot of people that try to go in with the approach, I want my cake and I want to eat it too. And you can't do that. You have to, especially when you're dealing with airlines, you have to make it straightforward and easy for them to transact, because, like you said, Courtney, they have 150 other things that aren't related to aircraft trading that they're dealing with in the fleet management side of things.
And another 100 novations they've got to
right. Yeah, especially
sign
these days,
off
right?
on. And
yeah.
Yeah.
If you make it easy, if you make it easy enough, I mean, it's getting tougher in this business to differentiate that way, because there's 100 other people that are going in there. Look at the SLB market. I mean, the SLB market is who just like a lot of things, a race to the bottom on cost of capital, who has the lowest cost of capital, and also who's easiest to transact. So it's one of those things. It's kind of nuanced now, and for guys like us, that was a relationship that was really specific. We have our good trading relationships. We don't like to spray in terms of we really focus on the long-term relationships we've had, building new ones, of course. But those are where we think that there's good value.
Yeah. So did you ever have the moment where you realize, if I don't get this right, it's millions of dollars that are at stake, right? Which kind of, when I remember my CIT days, right? Which at that point had already been in aviation for a few years, but the numbers start getting pretty big, and you get a little bit desensitized to they're just numbers. But when you're working for a smaller firm, at the end of the day, it's like, oh, if I didn't do this analysis right, or if I didn't get that, it could mean a lot of money for the people here. Did that ever come into your head of holy shit, this could be good or horrible?
Yeah. And it's kind of at that time when I was doing analyst duties and pricing, at some of the bigger leasing companies, you have a team that does that, right?
Yeah.
Of analysts, and you got, numbers. This was a little bit like accountability in golf, right? You can only put your hand up, and that's it, right? And so if I made a mistake, it was me and only me that was going to feel the wrath of whatever was coming to me, and I remember we were working on another deal, and it was really when I was getting into complicated deal structuring, that we had an old CFO that is no longer with the company, but he shared a lot of wisdom and knowledge with me. And one of those was, if you screw this up, you're out of here, first of all. So whatever you're doing and whatever you're putting your name on, you triple, quadruple, whatever, how many times check, because you'll always be tied to it. And it will continue to follow you. This mistake, if you make a mistake, it's not like it just goes away. That follows you around, because this is a small business too.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have it, and that was one of the learning steps for me, was being able to open up and seek advice and seek input and feedback from people that are qualified to give it to you at such a young age, when I was feeling it out, and making sure that I was in the right mindset to try to not make a mistake. Because there were a few models where, we're doing these really intricate trades with different angles that we come up with. And, you sit there and you're like, okay, because I'm staring at the three guys in the face that this would affect, right? At that time, before I got into the investing side, Jeff's standing there, Michael's standing there, Michael Goldberg, who's the founder of Aerolease, and you're staring at the people that this could harm, and it becomes personal for me, right? Because
because they know where you live.
They know where I live.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they hold your future in their hands. Right.
And so I think that, Garrick, was an added kind of, okay, I really got to get this right, because a lot of times in the industry, we don't know who is on the end of funding a transaction, right? There's pension funds, there's private equity, there's savings accounts, there's whatever is being used to fund aircraft deals, and you don't see those investors, you don't see those people in the funds. It's a mom and pop, or some family or whatever, that we don't see the investment decisions that we're making, and how they affect people, and that was one that really drove home for me, as I was staring at the people that my investment decision or input or modeling input that I would give would affect and either harm or help make them rich, So
you're still there.
Still there.
Okay.
I'm still kicking, so I think I don't
Nothing to announce.
Didn't make too many mistakes. That's good. Or too many bad mistakes.
Right.
I mean, I guess maybe for our listeners, and we've had Jep on, but you talked about before kind of you guys, Aerolease kind of does not only aviation, do a little bit of a few other things too. So I don't know if you want to, chat about that real quick, just to kind of go through ultimately what you guys do. Because I think a lot of people know you guys for aviation. But I think, from conversations we've had in the past, it's like you do other things as well.
Yeah. I mean, the way we like to say it is we're private investors, like I said before, private investors in aviation and other things, right? So aviation is the bread and butter. We are aircraft guys. That's how Aerolease started. Michael started in 1986. The company, back in the days of George Batchelor in Miami, and the wealth has been created in aviation. The wealth created in aviation now allows, not even now, but has allowed other people in Aerolease to go do other things. So, for example, Michael is chairman of Aerolease now. He is still involved in Aerolease deals, but he is in a bunch of other things, hospitality, tech. His sons run a pseudo family office of VC capital that are out doing, really, really cool things in the world. And Jep, as it is with Michael and the relationship with Michael, gets involved in that. And then Jep also has his other ventures that he gets into. I mean, historically, he's done racing teams. He's done art. He's done, he has a power sports dealership in Vermont. So aviation is the bread and butter of what we do. That's where the wealth is created to go do other cool things, or, lifestyle investments or not, that's how we do it. I'm just starting out in the aviation investing side. So I'm working to that point, where I can go out and do some other things. But it's always with the mentality that we're private investors, and it doesn't have to be aviation.
Yeah.
And I think that really opens up our minds and doesn't give us pressure to do aviation deals. If you raise a fund for aviation deals, you got to go do. Yeah. You got investors that got to go do that, and we don't do that. Raise funds. Then it makes you do stupid transactions and stuff that you're gonna get kicked for later, and having our heads kind of up and executing on cool aviation transactions like we do and we consistently do. But we don't have to. And that is the freedom that offers us the patience and the ability to transact the way we transact in aviation.
I think that is probably the most understated aspect to leasing today. The ability to wait. Like, if you play that out to the logical conclusion, you'll hear this from lessors. So Garrick and I hear it all the time. We have to deploy capital. I mean, look, we hit our funding targets. Have we put this much capital to work this year? These are our targets. These are what bonuses and stuff are paid off of. Logically, that means you're going to end up in some pretty stupid deals. Because they're not all going to be great all the time. If they are, then, it attract more people. But right. The ability to wait is a huge advantage.
And there's two different schools on that. It's like, okay, you got to deploy capital. That's traditional. And then there's the other side, which is market share, which we know multiple, places in the world like Japan and China have made big pushes to control large amounts of infrastructure, including aircraft, commercial aircraft, which is one of the most critical infrastructure pieces that we have in the world. And there's that. And okay, if you're taking like the Chinese, 100-year view of an environment, a market, the world, right? You're just going out and doing deals to get the market share, right? And get control of aircraft. And if you just roll it on down the road, then as long as you have control of the aircraft, then that's fine. On the deployment side, the perfect leasing company would be, I have $500 million and you can deploy it whenever you want, no pressure. You have 50 years to use this up or whatever, so that you don't have to go in and make those decisions, because the way we're structured, all the way down to, and this applies to, public companies and, quarters, quarterly reporting, quarterly benchmarks and metrics, it really muddies the investment decision-making process, and when you have that pressure, and like I said, when it's OPM, right? Other people's money, it's okay. What are my motivations in doing this aircraft deal? And it's most likely to get paid a fee or whatever. And we got to go do the deal. We got to go everybody's doing that right now. We're December 16th today while we're recording,
Yeah, tell me about it.
And everybody's rushing to the finish line of year end to get deals in, So, having the ability to wait is paramount in this industry. And having also as important is having the ability to transact when the opportunities come up. They always say cash is king, but having the relationships and the financing relationships and the ability to transact when there is chaos, that is where it really,
that's the napkin mentality, right? Back to the napkin. That's where that comes from. But you're right. The ability to, look, everybody can do something in the back of the napkin, but does the napkin now mean something? Right? Can you actually transact, not on the napkin, but on the conversation, and do it in a time that's kind of respective of the informality of it.
It still happens. Mm-hmm. I'd say it happens a lot less now with how. And I think we also have a subject to discuss about this a little bit later. But as the industry becomes more consolidated and commoditized and institutional, what you mentioned before, the good old boys of trading, the good old boys club. That still exists, but it's a lot more competitive because the good old boys are hearing from 50 other guys and companies that are competing to deploy capital and get deals done, So there's a point where the relationship is like, I'm sorry, buddy, old pal.
I'm price for everything.
Bidding $25 million over where you guys are at, and I got to go do that deal, Yep. And I've handshook deals in sports books in the Bahamas, right? It still happens, right? And it's there, and it's the relationship aspect of it is critical, though. Is critical,
So I'd love to get into what you guys are going after today. When you've been in the A330 market for the last couple of years, right? So it'd be great to kind of get your thoughts now that you're fully into that market. Hopefully, there's no more like, hey, you know what, this. It's still a secret. We're still going to go with that. I think everybody kind of knows how well the A330 market's done over the last couple of years. But I'd love to get your thought in terms of like your thinking and how you guys got into that market. What made you go, you know what, we should look at that a little bit more closely. Like something's going to happen. Like how did you get into that? Because obviously you've done fairly well, I think, with the A330s that you do have.
Yeah. So, like I said, we operate on this like 10-year investment horizon, right? Usually we're out, like it's always a pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered mentality when you get to the second half of a decade. Like if we're seeing numbers that are just insane, we're going to transact and we're going to start our exit strategy. If we could hold on for another couple of bips, maybe, you could do that, but you could also get killed. So in the last cycle, which is, I have the benefit now of, experiencing probably one of the most insane and high visibility globally market triggers that we've experienced in aviation, maybe up there with 9/11. GFC was a big one on the financial side, but we didn't have this big drop in demand like we did,
No, nothing compares to
I hate
COVID.
to use the word unprecedented because that's been beaten to oblivion, but it really is. And the situation that we still face is unprecedented. But in the late 2010s, we had pretty much liquidated our 757 portfolio by, middle of 2019. And that was just like I said, the pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered mentality. We were seeing crazy numbers. I remember seeing a Pratt 2 deal. Well, we did the Pratt 2 deal for like 12 unserviceable engines, and we couldn't believe where the numbers were coming out like way over core value and all this kind of stuff. So once we saw that, we started seeing some other deal data points, we decided to liquidate. So we had from like middle of 2019, where the only aircraft we owned was a 737-700 on lease to Southwest Airlines. Shout out Southwest.
I've heard of them.
I think we have, yeah.
Yeah, small airline, yeah.
And we had that going into COVID, and that's all we had.
That's
right?
insane.
And so
it's better to be lucky than good.
Right, exactly. And that's no truer statement, Courtney. Like there's a lot of, you can strategize as much as you want, but luck plays a big part in this stuff. So, so from 2019 onwards, we were still trading. Like we did an engine here. We did an airframe that closed February of 2020, which was crazy timing, but it was a trade. And it was one of these trades where we had no basis, and it was like, if we make this money, great, but if not, just park the airplane and, see what happens.
Yeah.
So in the tail end of 2019, and this was the first time that I had the ability to think strategically about an aircraft that I see as the next thing, right? And I started, we have this whiteboard in the office where we do all of our strategizing, and we would sit there, me and Jep, and just talk about these things. We talked about A319s, we talked about, and specifically A319s, like not 320s, not 321s, 319s. We talked about the regional space a lot and the viability of doing something there. And one place that, I really, really focused on was the A330-300. And that was due to, pre-COVID, it was solely due to the fact that 767 feedstock was running out. Large integrators and express shippers in the world had committed to the 767 in big ways and would need a medium wide body replacement aircraft. And that the A330-300 is the only replacement to a 767-300ER freighter. Maybe not apples to apples comparison, but it is the only thing that will be there. And now we're sitting in a position.
Look, when you're starving, you don't get to choose if it's an apple or an orange.
Right.
It's the only thing.
Whatever you got. And the other side of it is it is a incredibly mission flexible aircraft. I mean, it was built to do the bus routes in Southeast Asia, doing 2 to 3 to 1 hour to cycle ratios. But then now you have it, flying from Western Europe to we have an A330 that flew Madrid Lima yesterday, doing this and so there's a lot of similarities to the not exactly, but to the 757 in terms of what the aircraft was able to do around the world, right? And so when you threw all this stuff into the bucket, you're like, okay, the 330 is cool, and it's something that we're definitely going to focus on. Then COVID happened, and we went into a hole because all we had was that 737 was probably the best credit in the world at the time, and so we went and just sat in our data hole, and all we did was listen, talk to people, hear what's going on, and in the first few months of shock from what was happening in the world, we started putting together a thesis that you guys have been very, very good at articulating. That there were, and that's what happened, a number of aircraft that just were not going to be built because people couldn't show up to the factories. They couldn't show up to the FALs. The suppliers couldn't show up to their manufacturing sites, and all the way down the supply chain. And playing into, at that point, the MAX had been grounded since 2018, and it
19 early 19 was it
19, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I used to have America's 2019.
I mean, it was early.
And you had such a lack of aircraft on the narrow body side being built. Then once the factory shut down in COVID, there were zero. And in other market cycles, whitetails get built. Right. They go out to the desert, and you can go pick them up at a later date. But we didn't and don't have that now. And so, during the first parts of COVID, we were looking at, I think from May of 2020, probably through maybe Q3, Q4 of 2020, you could have probably picked up some cool narrow body deals. Distress, where we love this chaos brings opportunity mindset, where we love to operate in distress, special situations, AOG, hair on it, whatever. There probably were a couple deals you could have done, and people did transact. But once we got to Q3, Q4, it went right back, and we were seeing the green shoots, and everybody knew what was happening, and we're not distress selling. The wide bodies, on the other hand, got hit hard. And there were a lot of people that were in situations on wide bodies where they needed to get out, where they needed a pragmatic trading partner like us to get out of situations in a creative manner. And so we keep and we've talked about this between us three, but for the benefit of the listener, we equate the A330s, and you could even say the 777s, to this cycle's DC 1030 after the American crash in the 80s. When that happened, the values of DC 10s went next to zero. Then it gets ungrounded and it goes up, maybe not to par, but significantly above zero, right? And the 330s did exactly the same thing. And the trick there is getting into it when people are still distress selling, but you can see the established recovery in the market with regard to passenger demand. And so we picked up our first A330 in September of 2022. We got laughed at. We got, Hey, what the hell are you guys doing? We got the classic, have fun with that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh yeah. 22 people still were like, man, and plus the A330 at that point, I mean, it was already in the dumps prior to COVID, right? And so it was just a continuation, and values kept dropping lower and lower and lower, right? And people were like, yeah, nobody wants those, right? Nobody. And then, that's when we started talking about, and there were a few people that started talking about like the wide body stuff, looking at it going, well, yeah, somebody should be paying attention to that, right? But yeah, that's
utility.
Yeah.
Right. And the thing too, I mean, that market came back so strongly, it didn't even need your original thesis, which was as a super strong freighter, because we can't even get feedstock because they're valued so high now.
So the big thing there is controlling the feedstock.
Of course.
And that still becomes a thing for us. But the way the market, and I mean, we're still like Garrick, when we were at the Airbus forum in Miami, I mean, lease rates on A330-300s continue to go up. There are no aircraft available. If you have one available, go heel click, because you're gonna get a good rate. I think what a lot of people, first of all, like you said, guys, the pre-COVID, the A330-300, the A330 in general was overproduced. The production rate on the A330 was way too much. Airbus learned its lesson. And when the factory shut down, they weren't produced. And now they keep even the Neos on a tight leash. And so you had this kind of perfect storm of, okay, the values before COVID were going down. and now COVID hit, and now they're next to zero. So let's get rid of them. And also this mentality on the wide body that, I find funny sometimes is, transition costs and LOPA reconfigurations and stuff like that. That stuff can be managed, but people have this view like A330 300 reconfig, $15 million all day long. And, okay, if you're going from a full economy, high density configuration to, a Qatar 3 class, super big, first in business, with going from 9 abreast to 8 abreast, all this kind of stuff in a LOPA reconfiguration that you would consider. Yeah, okay, maybe. But, in a time and place like we are, there's creative ways to manage that with, like we have an aircraft that has a pretty large business class and a extensive economy, and, taking out the business class, backfilling with the economy seats, even if you have to do some seat track stuff and some PSU work, you can do that relatively more cheaply than doing a big LOPA reconfiguration. And that's like going out, and that's who the credits you're dealing with. Obviously, like if you're going for a Qatar credit or that's your space in the industry, then okay. But if we're trade land, we had the ability to get creative on that. Like we delivered that aircraft as is from a operator in Southeast Asia. It was 36 business class, 263, and we delivered it as is.
Mm-hmm.
Did seat covers and stuff like that. But so those two things that come down off of COVID and even happening before COVID, and kind of these legacy views of wide body and how wide body aircraft are managed, just created an opportunity for the aircraft. I think the same thing applies to the 777. At the same time, everybody was staying away from it. Too big, big risk if you're going to take that bet, and some people did, and they're sitting pretty now.
Yeah.
I think
that market, didn't the 777 market, the long haul market came back so quickly, it skipped over the 330 and went straight to the 333.
Exactly.
And then came back and picked up the 330 on the way up. And now we're just kind of short everything.
Whatever you get with wings and has an airworthiness certificate, it's going.
Preferably.
But for the difference for us, the medium wide body was a really perfect space for us to transact in, because the 777, you are really gauging up in terms of risk. I mean, if you have a GE90 blow, right, it's what, $20 million plus? I don't even know. It's probably insane, where you're doing a Trent 700 for 13, 15, depending on what you got to do. And so we nestled into that space. And, we've transacted on a number of aircraft already, engines. We decided to focus on the Trent 700, which is another controversial take. And kind of that legacy mentality that anything Rolls has is hard to transact in because of the control they have in the aftermarket. That is not the case anymore. We have seen a budding aftermarket for the Trent 700. Teardowns, USM coming up. LLPs are still not tradable to the MROs in the shops. But fan blades, fillers, QEC material, you can go out and get that stuff. And more people, when I say people, airlines and lessors, are accessing these third-party companies to fill a void that Rolls cannot fill themselves, just because they're hamstrung on their supply chain network, just like any OEM is. And so there are people filling the void. There are more people that are not signing up for Total Care, flight hour program. I think that's more, even happening on some other aircraft types that are kind of in the maturing phase of their life cycle, of the fleet life cycle, and relying more on the aftermarket. And if you look at what happened with the RB211, the same thing happened. It's a Rolls product, right? And then later on, as the 7.5s matured, more third-party MRO capabilities started coming in. Standard Aero started a shop in Texas that was able to do full performance restorations. Unless I'm mistaken, they had really good big capabilities on the engine. And I think now that's being accelerated because you have the likes of the major customers of Rolls-Royce that have total care agreements in place, or whatever form, lessors with LifeKey or Opera or Elpra or whatever they have, where you have spare engine provisions where if an engine goes dead, they give you a spare. But due to the lack of the green time in the engine market, the OEM can't even support that.
Right.
So you have big customers screaming up and down like, you got to solve this. And there are people that are stepping in to fill the void on the material side. On the shop side, it's still pretty constrained, But
what's driving? In your experience, what's driving those shop constraints, the MRO constraints? Is it labor, or is it just
everything under the sun that we talk about?
All of the above.
Manpower. What's being called now, I saw someone bring this term up, the golden bolt, where you get into a shop visit and you could have pre-planned the shop visit a year and a half out, get all the material sourced, arranged on site, and then you open up the engine and there's that one bolt that's on a year lead time.
Be a good podcast name.
In every single shop visit, you are not exempt from that happening in this environment. We just sent a Trent 700 in for a fan case replacement that was supposed to be 15 days, and it ended up being a 6-month shop visit.
Wow.
This is not opening up the engine. Right. This is line stuff. I mean, it's some QEC, and it took us 6 months, and it's manpower constraints. It's people just can't find the engineers. Everybody's leaving because during COVID they didn't get paid, or they got terminated, and they went, in this country, in the US, people went and, screw this. I'm not working for Boeing. I'm going to work at SpaceX or Tesla or whatever, and so it's that, and it's also the supply chain problems that continue to plague the industry. Especially on the A330 side, on the Trent side, we have this wave of engines and landing gear replacements and all this stuff that is happening from this bulk of aircraft that were produced in the mid 2010s. That all shows up now. I mean, this landing gear thing, it was a big it still is a huge problem. You can't find an A330 enhanced landing gear shipset on the market. Any green time whatsoever. And if you have green time, it's extravagantly priced, as it should be.
Yeah, I've heard some big numbers on gear. It's crazy.
It is ridiculous. So we coming back to the Trent side of things, we went down the space. We have, I think, if the idea is, if you have the relationship with Rolls and you have the ability to understand how to operate in the belly of the beast, then you can make it work. And we're really careful about the Trent engines that we do because of that. But we've been able to make it work so far, in how we trade with them, and it's been a nice thing. We've looked at some CF6s, but like I said towards the beginning of this conversation, we tend to really hyper focus. And on the 757 with 2 engine types, that's okay. But when you have 3 engine types on an aircraft, especially with one that is clearly, the chosen,
just dominates,
dominates the market. We decided to stick with that platform.
But I remember hearing not too long ago about how the 330 freighter would favor the Pratt and GE engines, and that really hasn't been the case. Like, we've seen Trent 700s go through conversion at about an equal rate, a representative rate to the size of the fleet.
Yeah. Well, I think the Trent just performs so well, right? It's really become, and we've talked about that, and we've put that in some of the analysis that we do, but right, I mean, the fact that you get some engines that are getting close to 6,000 cycles between shop visits, it's huge, right? It's just, and that when you look at the Pratt and the CF6, like, they're not that far off, but they just don't get there, right? So yeah, it's
and cargo guys, the biggest banner in an office is on reliability and dispatch reliability, and a Trent 700, fresh from performance restoration with 6,000 cycles, will operate to the nub as long as it continues operating. Yeah. If you park a Trent 700, that's where things come loose.
Yeah.
I think also, in a normal world, like all the flight hour programs, you got to think about who's getting into this engine: DHL, Amazon, ATSG, who have done a lot of CF6 powered aircraft. But I think the spec of the aircraft as well, and the age of the aircraft for a lot of the big operators is falling into this category where it was mostly dominated by Trent deliveries. So when you look at the fleet, you look at the reliability of the engine, you look at the predictability of the engine. If you are in a flight hour program, it just becomes a lot clearer. For an operator, of course.
So the A330 secret is out, right? I think everybody kind of figured out. Okay, yeah, you know what? Great airplane. If you can get your hands on them, it's a good thing. So from your standpoint, based on what I know about you guys and based on your history, you're probably starting to think about, okay, so what are we going to do next? And
go for the cheapest thing.
Go for the
MD-11s are like, listen.
Yeah, I heard you could pick a couple of those up.
A dime a dozen, literally. No, but so without sharing any of your strategy, but so are you starting to look at that? And the big question would be, do you see any opportunities over the course of and it may not, I'm not talking about like the next couple of years, but more like the next 5 to 10 years, which is probably when you're going to start wanting to get probably out of the A330s to a certain extent, unless you're on the freighter side, which that's going to probably last for a while. But, so when you look at the landscape, like, do you see similar opportunities? Or has that changed because of all the OEM stuff, all the new products that are coming in with all these headaches? Like, I'd love to get your take on that.
Yeah. So I see. So this A330 300, and really we've done a lot of the 300s because of the cargo aspect of things. The 200 is a range airplane, and not a lot of integrators need that. They need the volume in the airframe to do what they need to do. We're at the point now where this market is insane. We are seeing, and this comes back to where we're at in this unprecedented time, where supply chains are still broken. We still have a shortage of aircraft. And there will continue to be a shortage of aircraft for an extended amount of time. I think that's already been determined by a lot of the thought leaders in this industry. The question is for me is, how does the next market trigger affect this unprecedentedness, if that is a word? You're going to have some crisis that affects passenger demand in the next, 5-6 years, let's call it. And it's history. 9.8 years from the dawn of the jet age. It's 9.8 years, and that's it, right? You have these little blips in between, but those are managed, and they're mostly regional stuff. So looking into the 2030s, I think that the A330 300 continues to be a large application because of the runway it has on the cargo side. There are so many young aircraft in the market that, if you have an opportunistic trader like me come in a market environment like not equitable to COVID, but a large environment where values take a hit and everything, I see myself picking up more A330 300s, even if I sold them in the tail end of this cycle. Basically, sell down and then pick up where we left off. But there's another aspect of this, looking into the new gen aircraft, that, you know, there's really one aircraft that I think is the real application, when you comp it to, you know, all these other, an A321XLR. Is that really the killer app right now? If you can use it in the way it's meant to be used, okay.
It's a sliver. If you're in that sliver, great. Right? But it's a sliver of range. Yeah.
And Courtney, you just wrote a piece on this.
Say it.
The A339.
Let's go!
That is, and listen, I did the same thing when I saw the post. I was like, this is the kind of content that needs to be out there. But it is the killer application. I think what the question is how does, we heard a lot about this in various appraiser forums, Garrick, that, you know, where are the values? Where's Airbus selling them? Are there opportunities in a vacuum, you know, when something happens to pick up aircraft? There could be. I think, you know, for new gen aircraft, the biggest drawback for us is how they are managed, because they're all in flight hour programs. It's very, you know, institutional OEM wise about how you manage a new aircraft. And so the tradability and the creativity that you can bring into, you know, a midlife aircraft where you can do this, you could do that, you know, maybe this aircraft's on a 12-year lease where you got to roll that out and whatever. But the airplane itself, the A330-900, is the killer app. I love the airplane. It's an A330-300 with 200 range, which opens up the world to a lot of operators that weren't able to do that with a 300, and could potentially be on either par or slightly better operating economics when you take into account the financing of the aircraft, the financing cost for the aircraft, and the operational characteristics of the airplane to a 787. And I think it opens up a lot of markets. I think it on an operating basis, on an operating cost basis, it kicks ass. And I really think it is the next new application. And I would love to try to pick some up in the next cycle. I just, you know, for an aircraft that's new like that are trading, you know, at your 0.7% lease rate factors, 0.8% lease rate factors, if they're getting traded, you know, it's just not a space that I'm going to be in. And I think, just going off of it, I think Avalon's order and continued ordering of the aircraft is probably one of the better aircraft order strategies that has happened in the last, 5 years. Going big on that aircraft, I think, is the move if you have the ability to do it, and they have done it, and they, they've been clear through their actions about how they feel about the airplane. So yeah, I think the A330-900, the A330-300 is going to continue to have its day in the 2030s.
Yeah, they built those through, what, 16, 17?
What, production?
Yeah.
2020. Oh, I thought it was 2019.
I think there were some late deliveries.
2019, yeah. I mean, there's
four,
right. It really trails off.
Yeah, there were 4 in 2018 that were built that were whitetails, that stayed whitetails during COVID. Okay. And then our friends at Altiver picked those up.
Yeah, they're at Hawaiian now, or they're going to Hawaiian, I think, right?
I believe they are freighters at Amazon.
Operated
it's through Hawaiian,
I think.
Yeah, operated by Hawaiian. Exactly. Exactly. So, built through 2018, you have the bulk of deliveries happening from like 2012 to, let's say, 2010 to 2016, 15. So you have a lot of young airplanes in the fleet that are still having long useful lives. And so the freight application for the A330-300 is going to continue, and I think there's going to be opportunities to transact on the aircraft type going forward for sure.
Yeah, I like that. Look, I mean, if you look at the wide body space, can put this in the note as well. I think whatever this mythical NMA-ish thing is going to be has frozen a few people into inaction. But it shouldn't, I guess, is kind of the point. And the 330 CO is a major part of that as well. But for me, it starts exactly where you started, Aaron, which is, wait a minute, where are they going to get these freighters? Because remember, we started, hell, FedEx started with Falcon 50s, but call them 727-100 was kind of the first big narrow body freighter. Then, okay, we won 200s, right? Then it was the 75. They only go up and they don't backfill down. At some point, the 767 is going to be the narrow body freighter. It kind of already is.
Right.
You know, which means that 330 is sitting right in that sweet spot.
Yeah, and the 76 has already been, I mean, there's still a few fleets out there that are marginally good conversion candidates, but most of
they're all at like an Agile.
That will be
kind of it, right? Maybe some LATAM.
You know, and so if you think about, especially the large integrators, you know, UPS, FedEx, Amazon and DHL are a little different because they have converted aircraft and continue to convert aircraft. But FedEx, after the 757, said, you know, we're never converting another aircraft because of the lack of commonality of the spec of aircraft, the hodgepodge of a fleet that you have to put together, because there's not just one big fleet that would serve a giant like FedEx that you could go and convert and create a uniform spec for your fleet, which they thrive on that stuff.
Well, the 76 did that.
Scale. And the 767 did that.
Yeah.
And they went and they built they got production freighters, right? And now you have that coming to an end, right? And also with the whole MD-11 stuff that we have going on. So it's really fascinating about how the next, you know, cargo is going to come back. It's had its you know, it's been hit at the kneecaps for a few years here after the COVID bubble. Cargo is coming back, and in a big way. And the A330-300 is sitting there, perfectly positioned to be a replacement to a 767 freighter. But I also, coming back to the original question, the opportunities in the 5, 10, 15 years, wide body freighters. I think that a 777-300 ER converted freighter, I think 777-200 LR freighter, A330 freighter are all going to be major applications because you have an aging nose loader population on the 747, not only nose loader, but aircraft in general.
Just capacity, yeah.
Capacity, and that's a lot of capacity that's going to have to get retired. And you also have a 777X program that is at its knees. And with I mean, there are dates that are published, but who knows when aircraft are delivered, you know? And so the wide body going up to the wide bodies, cargo market is definitely an opportunity. And there are couple different ways you can skin that, which you can control the feedstock and sell the feedstock into conversion programs. You can go and create a conversion strategy yourself, and do that. I don't think we would get into that because of, you know, we touched on it earlier, Courtney, the you know, what's an A330-300 cargo conversion kit now, $22 million when you cannot touch the airplane and lease it for $450, you know, plus, you know, and so, you know, investing in the aircraft. That's why we love the narrow body conversions, the 7.5s and stuff, because, you know, you could do a door kit for $4.5 million at that time, you know, throw another $1.8 million into a D check and whatever else you got to do, you know, you're on ramp for something reasonable.
Yeah. But even that's changed, right? I mean, if you think about A321s today, what are they, $9-10 million to convert?
Absolutely.
I mean, forget about the feedstock, right? So that's changing as well, right? So it's becoming.
Yeah, but this is something we've talked about a lot, Garrick, just between the two of us. We don't always include Aaron in each of our private conversations. But the idea that, like, if you think of one of the hottest narrow bodies on the market today is 737-800 NG, right? For all sorts of good reasons. So to take that airplane and put, I don't know, what, $5 million into a conversion?
No, $7.
Okay, put $7 million into a conversion and then get a lower lease rate as a result. Like, the airplane loses value after that, just purely based on the disconnect between the passenger and the freighter, narrow body freighter market. And it's specific to the 800, right? Because of the MAX, and turns out the 737-800 has two engines that when you turn them on, they actually provide thrust reliably. I didn't realize this was a thing for a long time.
That's silly. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
No, but the 800, like there was the time during COVID when the thing that you can't do is chase markets. You can't, like, okay, if you had some vision in early 2020 at a moment in time where you said, okay, belly capacity in the world is going to go to zero on international routes. There is going to be a huge opportunity for dedicated cargo aircraft. You would have made out like a bandit, right? And
if you already had the kit.
You know, if you already had the kit, or if you were in there really early, you would have made out like a bandit. But there are a lot of people that chase that market, and the problem with a cargo airplane is once you cut the hole in it, you can't take it out. So,
right.
You know, we subscribe to the strategy of waiting until you either have to, because there were a lot of people that had to during COVID. I get that they had to create a story for investors where you can, the whole economic useful life story where now it's a 30-year airplane, blah blah blah. You know, but you know, for us, you wait until you either have to or it's an opportunity to. Which, like we said, the way passenger aircraft are trading, leasing, whatever. You know, it's not really an opportunity. So I think for us, the big thing is controlling the feedstock so that you have, you know, a in-demand airframe for the cargo market and understanding how that works and where people need to be on ramp and spec of aircraft and all that kind of stuff. So you're picking the right horses, and you know, really understanding that and you know, transacting with that in mind.
And the A330 did that, right? I mean, the thesis may have been, look at this great, you know, long cargo tail and value out that end. And, oh, by the way, now the passenger market's insane. I don't care. Like, cool. I'll take that money before we cut the hole in it. Like, right. That sounds great. It gives you that option. Yeah.
The decision was easy to make this time. You know, 7.5s. Okay, we got a passenger deal here. It's good, right? But here's this freighter deal where we could, you know, like we were saying, put $7 million into the airplane, and you get a freighter lease rate that is just, you know, the economics of that deal are just as good as the passenger. There were cases where the passenger deal was better than the freighter, and you could kind of mix and match. But this was easy decision all day long. You just stay in passenger land until, you know, you have the airframe in a condition where you've capitalized on all this market frothiness, and you can sell the airframe off to a cargo guy for, you know, what they need it for. You know.
Yeah.
Would you call the market frothy today?
Yes.
Does Starbucks make cappuccinos?
Yes.
I mean, come on.
Lappuccino, Frothuccino, whatever. It is as frothy as I mean, I've not been in the business as long as some of your other guests. I recognize that, but I do have the benefit of being able to listen to a lot of these guys and women in the industry that have that depth of experience, and seeing it myself over the last, you know, 10, 11 years. This is crazy. This is insane. And I mean, there's a lot of money to be made, but man, the fall from grace can be huge.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Was it 2 years ago, Garrick? We started to hear some talk of, was it about 2 years ago? Some talk of frothiness. And then what I've been interested in is the rate at which the people who have said no now say yes. There are very few, I know. If people are like, no, listen, no, it's not overbaked. This is just a good momentum trade. Which they're not wrong. I mean, there's no the production's not necessarily there, especially on wide bodies right now. So look, there's some managed risk to the idea of a momentum trade, but yeah, feels frothy.
It all comes down to who you ask and what their motivations are. Who you ask
Fair
that
enough.
question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Ooh, maybe that's a better question.
You know, if somebody, like, that's a benefit, like we were talking about. You know, we have the ability to be candid about that because it's clear. You know, and okay, we have a vested interest, but you know, we're not long in a lot of this stuff. You know, but if you are, you better be hoping this is, you know, a super cycle or whatever term people use in the past. You know,
but yeah. So look, Aaron, it's been absolute pleasure to have you on today. Like, we could definitely continue this conversation for another couple of hours. We'll just have to do it, you know, offline at another point. But it's been really cool having you on, and you know, we certainly love hearing kind of your thoughts on what's going on, and you know, we're going to be watching kind of all the stuff that you do because it's always fun to watch what you guys do, and you'll be right there, so it's going to be really cool.
Well, thank you guys so much. I like I said at the beginning of the pod, now we're using that term pod.
Yeah,
nice.
It's a
thing. It's a thing. Yeah,
it's an honor to be on here. You guys, like I said, are two of the most knowledgeable guys in the business, on the data side and on the aircraft value side in the market in general. So it's really a pleasure to have this conversation with you. Thank you for having me on, and you know, we'll be seeing you around at the next industry gathering.
With me, Garrick de Chavannes of Coloredal Vatifications.
Yep, that sounds about right.
Yep.
That's right, folks. This is without alcohol. Thanks.
What? Sorry, were we not supposed to start drinking? You gotta tell me before.
Yeah, I guess it is almost 5 o'clock somewhere.